Well, good evening. I'm Bjorn Hansen, and to all of our new students, welcome to the Tisch Center, and welcome to our fall semester. This is one of my favorite things that we do as a Tisch Center event every year, partly because I get to talk about Stephen Brener. Steve, to the lodging industry, is as influential as many of the names you would recognize, like Hilton, Marriott, and others, but because they had a different role in the industry, just people don't know him as well. So let me talk a little bit about Stephen Brener. There would be no Tisch Center if it were not for Stephen Brener. If we go back into the late 1970s, early 1980s, the Real Estate Institute, which is now the Schacht Real Estate Institute, had only non-credit courses, no degree programs. And Stephen Brener decided there really should be some hospitality programs at New York University. And the obvious place to house them among all of the choices was the Real Estate Institute. So he initiated the first hospitality courses at NYU. They were non-credit courses. As the Real Estate Institute added its master's program, he really felt that it was time for the hospitality program to be separated from the real estate program. The real estate industry, as many of you know, thinks of the hotel industry as a form of real estate, but we know it's an operating business, a very complex operating business that exists in highly specialized real estate. And he, with a number of other industry executives, convinced NYU that there should be a separate institute or center for hospitality management. And it was really his kind of personal influence that caused that to happen. And out of that grew the Tisch Center. And although he didn't get involved in the sports part of our sectors, again, there wouldn't be a Tisch Center without Stephen Brener. He also conceived the idea of what is now the NYU International Hospitality Industry Investment Conference. And if you haven't heard of it, it's the first weekend of June. We have about 2,000 senior executives from lodging around the world attend. It's the preeminent event for the lodging industry. And it generates over $1 million in net proceeds for the Tisch Center that we use for academic programs, scholarships, and to build an endowment for future scholarships. So again, if it weren't for Steve, we wouldn't have those resources and those funds. He also created a generation of names, some you would know. Stephen Rushmore, the founder and chairman of HVS, major supporter of our program. We have the HVS scholarships. It's an endowed scholarship funded by Stephen Rushmore and his family. Jeff Wilder. Jeff Wilder is the name on the lounge on the second floor of 7 East 12th Street. It's called the Atrium, but if you read the plaque, although Jeff Wilder really made the donation for the name space, he donated or dedicated the space to Stephen Brener. So again, we're just really fortunate that Steve did what he did for the Tisch Center. He also really changed the transaction business for lodging. It had been a little bit of place ads and distribute books, but Steve kind of transformed the practice of transactions for lodging by getting really to know buyers and sellers and what the needs were of each. And he really created almost a consulting business more than a transaction business of introducing buyers and sellers that had complementary needs, which increased the value, which increased his commissions. So I think there was some self-interest behind it. But he really transformed and professionalized the brokerage business. So again, we're just really, really fortunate to have had Steve as part of our history. The person who worked for Steve, who still works for the Tisch Center, is Dorothy Jennings. Dorothy couldn't be here tonight, but Dorothy is the conference chair for our June conference. And Jennifer Burns' office, our Industry Relations and Career Services office, next time you're there, you'll notice the plaque outside in recognition for everything that Dorothy Jennings has done. She worked for Stephen Brener for much of her career and now works for Stephen Rushmore. So again, part of kind of the Tisch Center family. So again, I just enjoy being able to share that history with you. Another reason why I like this event is the tradition of this event to award some of our scholarships. So Akshay and Lindsay, if you would please come up on the stage. We're very fortunate. We've been able to add scholarships for Tisch Center students over the last few years in both hospitality and in sports. And compared to 4 years ago, we're awarding 8 times the scholarship dollars. It's really been a significant increase. And we have a number of friends and partners that enable us to do that. And one of them is the American Hotel Association and a foundation it created called the American Hotel and Lodging Educational Foundation. And we have a number of scholarships that come through the H&A, and I wanted to talk about some of them tonight. Now, Sarah Shivy, one of our students, is studying away in Madrid. So she's receiving one of the ALICE, which is the American Lodging Investment Summit scholarships. ALICE is kind of a competitive conference to our June conference. It's not as good a conference, but it's a really nice conference. But I really want to acknowledge the people who lead that organization. And even though we are kind of a competitive conference, award scholarships to our students. So again, Sarah's not here to receive that tonight. Lindsay Seary, many of you know, is receiving one of the scholarships. So let me just present you with recognition that comes from the American Hotel and Lodging Foundation. And we'll take your picture here. We'll send it to the folks at ALICE and the Hotel Association. They'll really appreciate this. Congratulations. Now, there's another scholarship that comes through the American Hotel and Lodging Educational Foundation, which is the Rama American Dream Scholarship. The Rama family, and there are many Ramas in the lodging industry, but kind of the first family that really made a difference and helped found the Asian American Hotel Owners Association was the Rama family. And the family wanted to really pay back for the success that had been achieved. By the way, for those of you who don't know, the Asian American Hotel Owners Association controls 42% of the hotel rooms in the United States. It's an amazing story. 30 years ago, it was close to zero, and now again, what an amazing success story. These are mostly families from India, and now it's really a second generation of those families, again, representing 42% of the hotel rooms in the United States. But there's another scholarship that's awarded, and again, it's called the American Dream Scholarship. And Akshay is the recipient of that, so we'll take a picture of Akshay. Good. 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 Congratulations to both of you. Please. Thank you. We have many, many VIPs in the audience tonight, but I want to just mention a few who I haven't mentioned in the past. Rick Amato, who's the Vice President of New York Hotel Association. Rick, where are you? If you'd please stand. Thank you for being here tonight. New York Hotel Association, a longtime partner and friend of the Tisch Center, so a special thank you. We have about 20 members of our adjunct faculty. We are so fortunate to be in New York City and have access to these extraordinary industry leaders. I can tell you with what we pay them, they're not doing it for the money. They're doing it because they enjoy working with our students and giving back. So if I would ask all of our adjunct faculty to please stand. Good, please join me in thanking them. Keith Wan, who is the president of the Tisch Center Alumni Society, and Evan Weiss, who's the past president of the Tisch Center Alumni Society, are here. If they would both stand, please. And we have over 30 alums attending tonight. So if they would all stand, and if you'd please thank them for joining us tonight as well. Another reason I was looking forward to tonight is we have a really special program for you. And I'm going to introduce the moderator who really organized the event for us. Dr. Richard Bourne has his bachelor's degrees and also his medical degree from the medical school at NYU, longtime friend of our program. And he's kind of a secret almost in the lodging industry, which is really strange. His company, BD Hotels, has about 25 hotels, including the Greenwich, the Mercer, the Chambers Hotel. Those are luxury boutique hotels in New York. Kind of a little lower price point, the Holiday Inn, but also the Jane Hotel and the two pod hotels, with two more pod hotels under development in New York City. So this is one of the most clever, creative, innovative hotel executives in our hotel industry in America today, and just is someone who's very modest and very quiet, but again, a great friend. And next time you're in the 5th floor lounge, right now there's an interim sign on the glass partition that through the generosity of Richard and his family, that is a named space. And we're going to be putting in a bigger, bolder plaque over the next couple of weeks. So please join me in thanking and welcoming Richard Bourne, our moderator for tonight.
Thank you, Bjorn. It is a pleasure to return to NYU to be able to do this Stephen Brener lecture once again. And by the way, I worked for Stephen Brener.
Oh, did you really?
when I started years ago. I think everybody here is very, very fortunate to be able to have three very prolific, creative, and distinguished boutique hotel developers to talk about the industry, and specifically whether boutique hotels work in brands and in multiples. I'm not going to read the entire bio, you've received them. Alex Calderwood, who I guess career goes back starting in Seattle, where he developed Rudy's Barbershop, the Ace, and many other cultural icons. Rudy now Alex has pushed the Ace to Portland, Palm Springs, New York, and soon Los Angeles and London.
And Panama.
And Panama.
Yes.
Is that on the list? Okay.
Yes.
Ed Scheetz is an old friend as well. Ed started his career in Apollo, where he was a partner, then founded North Star Capital. Ed was the CEO and the largest shareholder of Morgan's Hotel, where he oversaw the developments of the Delano, Morgan's, Royalton brands. Ed has since developed the Rushmire in Montauk and is now spearheading the development and growth of the King and Grove brand, currently in Williamsburg and Manhattan, and I think soon to be expanding in Manhattan as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Sean MacPHERSON, I have to exculpate, is a present partner of mine. Sean started his career also out in Los Angeles, mostly in food and beverage operations such as Jones, Swingers, and moving to New York, beginning in the Park, and then went on to develop the Maritime, the Bowery, the Jane, the Marlton Hotels, Crow's Nest in Montauk, and has other projects in the works. So I think we're going to jump into it, and I'm going to start out with my first question to Alex.
Thanks.
I think the first and most challenging question I have in rolling out a boutique hotel brand, especially when one starts with such personal involvement and such input of culture into the first prototype, is how do you reproduce it? How do you ensure that this culture can be transported into other cities?
Yep.
And then how do you watch it and maintain it?
Yeah, oh, that's a big question. And that question comes up a lot frequently. Well, let's see here. I think the first thing that I've learned is that it's really all about the people, and it's, you can have the most, wonderful design and all the right kind of bells and whistles and so on, but at the end of the day, it's really the people that make a place. It's just like you can have, you could go to one restaurant that's like not such an interesting sort of place, but the people kind of give it the spirit, and conversely, you can have a place that's like wonderfully designed, but it has no soul, or it's sort of, dead on arrival because the people don't make it. So the reason I say that is the single biggest challenge is how do you replicate, because the people quotient is not an easy thing to replicate. And what I found is that you have to find the like-minded, strong leaders that then can translate what is the vision. But with that, I think what we've learned is that you have to look at it as an evolution. So it's like if you get, at least for us, if you get so caught up on having it exactly perfect, you'll probably drive yourself crazy and you won't really be able to replicate it. So it's really about instituting and engendering the ethos and the philosophy, but being open to it kind of like unfolding maybe slightly differently than maybe you might have thought. And it's really maintaining that sort of ethos and philosophy and engendering that part of it and so on. To then be able to replicate. So that was sort of part of the first part of the question, but I think it was kind of a three-part question.
Right. I mean, I think the only part left is really, how do you watch it? And how do you maintain it?
Yeah, that's a big part of it. I don't really have actually a very good answer for that, because we're just to be honest, because we're in the process of doing it. You're sort of in action about it and so on. I've noticed again, it's really about putting the right people in place, and I'll give you a couple examples. we just opened this hotel in London, which opened 8 weeks ago. And all last year, this was a big question on my mind, like how are we going to do this? And it's across the ocean, and the questions that you just asked would come up every week, like repeatedly from all kinds of different people. But we started the hiring process, and really through that, in terms of putting the executive team together, it really came to the right place. So, we interviewed a lot of different GMs, and we found this one guy, and he wasn't as experienced, but there was something about him that just seemed really right. And he's turned out to be dynamite, and he totally plugged in. Then we found the director of sales, and she immediately just sort of fit in. There's another role that we have, which we call a cultural engineer, which I guess would sort of be sort of field marketing. And we found that person, and she, and it was after interviewing a ton of different people, and she just really kind of plugged in with the existing team. And I now have confidence, that those people, and then there's others that are part of the team, but I just cite them as a few examples. I now have confidence that they have the eyes and ears, and they have the sensibility, and we may not agree each time on exactly what gets executed, but it's within the sort of zone, I guess is the way I'd put it. I don't know if that really answered your question. So I don't know how we're going to watch it. So I'm confident that, the instincts that got us here is the instincts that will lead us to the right answers, and I don't know what that'll be.
Ed.
Yes.
So you took over a group of brands created by your partner then, Ian. Mm-hmm. And then led and grew that company.
Right.
And now you're founding your own company and building your own brand more around a more central theme. What's the difference? What's the difference in creating it versus growing it?
A lot of things. Ian had, was somewhat established when we got involved with him. He was still officing in 2 hotel rooms in the Paramount, so I wouldn't say it was exactly an established company. So there was a lot of infrastructure work that had to go into that as well, but at least he had the core properties. In starting the King and Grove, we started very small with Rushmeyer's, which has 19 rooms, and so it's amazing to see what we've started to be able to do. And we were fortunate enough to end up with some pretty amazing properties, particularly the ones we have here in Manhattan, the Martha Washington, the Chelsea, and our project on Lafayette Street, right around the corner, across the street, I guess, actually, from here. So that let us, that was a key advantage for us to have that kind of high-quality portfolio, especially with the Chelsea being the central part of that, with its cultural legacy and importance to all kinds of people worldwide. And sort of helped us think about how to define the brand going forward, how to inform the brand, and how to sort of, think about what we now sort of, probably call sort of an eclectic family of hotels versus a chain, or whatever the phrase was in the title of this conversation. So it's more like the Royal Tenenbaums than it is anything else, I think. But we've got a great team that's been now with us for the bulk of the team's been with me for almost 2 years. And we've been obviously adding to that. Some of them are here tonight, so you can say hello to them if you want. And starting with that great core team is really what the key. Like what Alex said, it's the people and their experiences and their commitment to the vision and the brand and what they bring to the table as well.
Sean, you've built some of my favorite hotels in New York. But have you built a brand, or have you built a collection? And is there sort of a unifying culture among the hotels that could grow, or is it just a group of great one-off properties?
It's an excellent question. I have no answer for it. I don't think that the agenda was never to build a brand per se, and as Alex has built a brand quite successfully, and something I respect quite a bit. But I've never really been interested in brands, and I am interested in great properties, and sometimes people are able to duplicate things. I was thinking when we walked up here, the Amman for a period of time had a really special and unusual brand. And I think that it is a collection, and I think I like the Royal Tenenbaums sort of analogy. And there is a through line, and but I think that they are stronger as individuals, and they were designed to be individuals, and that's really always been my sort of driving force. Has always been trying to build the best project that was most appropriate for the particular site that I was working on, and that is always far bigger than merely duplicating the same thing over and over and over.
You know, I was just going to add to that actually, and so because I've actually stayed and lived in Sean's hotels for many, many years and so on. But I think I do think that there is a spirit there that actually does a thread that connects all the hotels and so on. There's something that you feel and so on, and something to the narrative for each of them, even though they're individual and so on. I do think there's a spirit that people sense.
They're children, for better and for worse.
Yeah, totally.
Right. So Alex, as you now are at the half a dozen hotel stage, there is an enormous difference between the Ace in Seattle and the Ace in New York.
Yep.
Physically, culturally, in every way.
Yep.
I'm going to assume you're going to continue to do these, or you wish to continue to do these. Which is the Ace? Is ACE going to be standardized in some way? Is there going to be a prototype? And are you going to, follow the model that, Sheraton and Hilton does that tells you how many strips of bacon to put on the plate?
We have a
How many
brand
sheets on the
standards.
bed?
Yeah.
So will
Yeah.
the ACE homogenize into a reproducible product?
Yeah, no, that's a good question and so on. Well, first of all, I think we've always seen ACE as an evolution. So, as you say, when we started with the first hotel, it's 28 rooms. We never had an intention that we were even going to do a second one. It was just it was almost like an art project actually when we did the first one. But to answer your question, each of the projects is developed with a narrative kind of to its kind of specific context. So I think a good example is when you look at the hotel we did here in New York and the hotel we did in Palm Springs. They were developed at exactly the same time. They opened, I think, within like a month of each other. But you couldn't ask for two different kind of polar opposite contexts. So the hotel in New York is, around 300 rooms, high impact F&B, retail, et cetera. And in Palm Springs, and it's a high demand market, arguably one of, if not the highest demand markets. But then Palm Springs is like a low demand market. It's a 5-acre resort. It's a completely different execution, but equally as dynamic and complicated. We very strategically did both of those at the same time to prove to ourselves and to prove to the marketplace that the sensibility and the sort of ethos around what ACE is, which is in my mind, it's kind of a sort of loose brand in a sense. There's a sensibility there, but it could be applied to two very, very different contexts. So to answer your question, I think that can continue to keep evolving. To answer your question about the standardization, the irony is there is actually already a bit of standardization kind of behind the scenes with ACE in terms of from a system standpoint. But even within the rooms, if you actually really analyze what we do from a room standpoint, the bed product is actually a consistent bed that has been very, very successful for us. The way that we actually design and build the FF&E is there is a slight standardization to it already, but there's a way that we do it that it feels unique in each of its contexts. So I don't know if that answers your question, but.
So Starwood, Hilton, Marriott have desperately moved out of the real estate business and just into intellectual property. Ed, are we about using the hotel brands as a vehicle to buy real estate, or are we looking to build a branding company and the real estate is the loss leader that helps us get there?
It's kind of both, depending on where you are in the cycle and also geographically. I mean, going back to the Morgan's days when Ian and I bought the Hudson, there was no Time Warner Center. It was on the far west side, and everybody thought there was no hope for it. It should be a dormitory or an old age home or something. 110 square foot rooms. And, there was a vision that went along with that so that we knew that that piece of real estate could be turned into a cash flowing asset that someday would hopefully have a lot of value. And so in that case, the idea led to the real estate acquisition, and you would never have bought it just on spec or for some other purpose if you didn't believe in that vision. But by the same token then, we're now, I think one of the things I always believe through Morgan's and also King & Grove, where we own all of our properties right now, is that when you're starting a brand, you have to be an owner. And I really believe that fairly strongly. For one, I think it gives you the control and strength to be able to execute the vision and control the product. And when you start out early on, if you don't have that control, you have a high risk of having your partners, developers, whoever, banks, interfere with what the objectives are. So, again, that we're in New York, so I love owning real estate in New York, just like you do, and so I'm happy to own as much as I can. But in other markets, we wouldn't necessarily make that same decision to own 100%. We might own less. I also found that the volume of projects that we do, it doesn't really lend itself to being a fee-oriented business. I don't really think you can make a lot of money in this segment by being just a manager. You have to get scale, and the idea, the ethos, what everybody up here is doing, can only scale so much before it becomes diluted. Then being an owner is another way to make sure that you earn enough from all the effort you put into these properties as well, which I don't think you ever would if you just did it for fees.
Sean, I actually agree with Alex in that I think you have built sort of a brand. You may not see.
Don't tell anyone.
Yeah, I think you may not see it, but I think your employees and your guests see it and feel it. The question is, would you take this act on the road? And if you did, would you take the brands on the road? In other words, if you decided to build a hotel in Chicago, would it be a Bowery? Or would you build a Jane in Las Vegas? Or would you just go ephemerally with whatever real estate you tripped upon in whatever city you ended up deciding?
I think curiously, what Alex does and what I do, it's sort of the same thing. It's two sides of the same coin. Alex quite clearly brands what he's doing, and yet they're all intensely unique and appropriate to the cities and the places he's in, whether it's London or Palm Springs. And I feel I do something very similar, and we all have our own unique styles, I hope. And so I would not try to force a Bowery or a Jane or anything on some other place. And every project I've ever done in my life, part of the joy of it, and I also think part of the sort of ultimate success of it, is born out of trying to do something that's really the most appropriate and sort of in sort of the kind of from a branding perspective, the semi-crass terms, the highest and best use of that asset. So that, something that just absolutely fits that place. So to bring Bowery to New York, yes, I suppose we could, but I couldn't imagine that would be the perfect fit. I couldn't imagine that would be the best thing that Chicago would want, or wherever it is. And I for one love when I travel to get the soap and have it say Paris or Palm Springs or whatever it is, and really feel that I have left where I am, and that's very important to me in my life. And that just wherever I go, I want to believe that I'm in that place, and it's very it's sort of antithetical to the sort of the origin of these, going back to the Hilton building the Cold War, where they were just trying to just absolutely create America and push this brand and this comfort. And I think that our culture has evolved quite a bit from that time.
Well, I think at that time there was like an intellectual fascination with the idea that you could do it, like this sort of globalization, and stamp out the same thing everywhere just because you could do it, and so on. And
it was the last globalized time, and people wanted to go to Cairo and stay at the Cairo Hilton and feel as if that they were still in the U.S. And we live in a different time where communication works differently, and people they want the comforts and the safety, but they want some they want to believe that they're closer to the culture.
I also think with technology that people have the tools and resources to discover the individual properties much more easily. The relative competitive advantages of being associated with a big chain versus being independent, have changed dramatically. The cost of having great systems and technology and reservations and marketing and doing social media, you could compete on most of those levels fairly effectively with anybody, and in some cases even better because it's more customized and you got people right there looking at it every single day. So I think that's enabled the collection concept of branding to be able to be even more successful than in the past, where it was much harder to connect things.
I think that's an excellent point. Excellent.
I think I'm back to you, Alex.
Oh, okay.
I'm sure that as you curate your hotels and your products, that you have a guest in mind. But I'm going to guess that a lot of the people who stay at your hotels are not your prototypical guests. Do you give thought on, as Ed said, how you're marketing and distributing your rooms? Your hotels have a very, very specific style and a very specific feeling. I assume you have people come to you who meet that lifestyle and people who may fantasize while they're at your hotel that they're part of that fantasy. Do you think about that as you go out to market with these products?
A bit. We think about it more when the question is asked, actually. What I've observed is it's really much more of a psychographic than a demographic. So it's very much a mindset, and that mindset transcends sort of age, income, socioeconomic background. So what I've observed, just anecdotally in the hotels, is that you see a really wide cross-section of guests. I'm reminded of there's a couple from the West Coast that stay at the New York Hotel all the time, and they're in their 70s. I suspect that they were probably kind of hippies, back in their youth, and they love the hotel, and there's something about the sensibility or the programming or something about the zeitgeist of it that they respond to, and I think there's an emotional element that people across a broad cross section respond to. So I forgot the question.
The questions are...
Sometimes I just start talking in tangents.
It's your guests who are really not your target audience who...
Yeah, I think that there are, it's like concentric circles and so on. So there is, I think the sort of core guest who I think responds to us, who is drawn to the projects, are what I've referred to in the past as sort of like cultural enthusiasts. So, they're kind of either like curious or maybe passionate about, a variety of different interests, whether, it's, literature or film or art or, culture, design, architecture, etc. And that is probably the core. But then there's, concentric circles that emanate from that of people responding emotionally to different elements. We don't honestly, we don't really think that much about. There's not a very serious calculated kind of strategy or calculation to reach certain demographics and so on. I think that what we put out there is what we're interested in and do it in a human way and kind of the way that our kind of the gut instincts of our collective team see it. And people respond to it, and I think if you get the basics right, the beds are comfortable and the Wi-Fi works and the service is there, we see a response. So.
Okay. Ed, I have been trying for the better part of a year to get a pod going outside of New York City. I built one in New York by happenstance, and I've been able to convince lenders or whatever, and I guess partially helped by our checkbook, to move forward and build another one and have two more in the works. And it's easy to do here, right, apparently. I'm finding it very difficult to convince anyone that a new concept, be it my concept or anyone, as odd as it is, Alex is the only one who's been able to transport his concept in multiple cities. I assume you're looking to do King and Groves in many other places, and I'm sure you're looking at a dozen deals now. What are the obstacles, and are you surmounting those obstacles?
We haven't yet. The core markets for us beyond New York will be Miami, LA, and London, all challenging in their own regards to get into in the kind of quality way that we would want to be in them. I got experience obviously in all of those markets in the past, and so I think we can surmount that. I think it's a little bit. Alex is, sort of overt branding strategy allows him to go to somebody and say, I'm going to do an ACE in London, and have them understand what that means. The flip side is the collection type strategy, and we're going to end up being somewhere kind of in between, I think. Is a little bit harder to translate to people. It's one of the advantages of being a really branded company is that you can talk to people about what you are and just say it's the ACE. But I do think given the kinds of properties we're going to be able to do in Manhattan and the kind of associations and I think hopefully the success that we'll have, that will enable us then, after we've proven that, to be able to explore the other markets more advantageously than right now. And we have 3 significant development projects in Manhattan that are going to roll out next year and the year after. So while I am looking at a dozen deals because I can't help myself, I'm trying to be somewhat restrained in terms of how we allocate our time until we sort of get everything going.
Okay. Sean, I've been amazed. I was initially amazed to see how successful Starwood was as an institution developing the W hotels. I actually was kind of secretly laughing at them when they were starting, and then, I guess they laughed back. And now Marriott, with Ian's help, is rolling out the Edition, and quite successfully. They just sold, effectively all their real estate and put all their money back in their pocket, and now they're off to the races. What are their competitive advantages, and what are our competitive advantages in terms of not growing, by leaps and bounds, but just on one-off properties, building something in a major city that has its own soul and culture? How do we compete with them, and can we compete, and are we better than them?
We're definitely not better than them. In a way, this ties back into what, Alex's kind of clientele, and I think you're getting at, does it appeal to people that it's not meant to appeal to? And in the last scene of Revenge of the Nerds, they stand up and one of the guys says, just remember there's more of us than there are of them. And I think that everyone sort of feels that way, whether they're a nerd or a cool person or whatever it is, and they have their group. And I think that what, getting to say the ACE is what Alex may not have thought of it much, but I've thought about the ACE and seen how successful it is. And if the product is, if the message is clear enough and the product is strong enough and people respond to it emotionally enough, it will be a self-selecting crowd. And so it may be that in the beginning, all throughout, you have people that aren't, the ACE is just simply not for them. But I think with, getting back to this thing of the W, I thought it was, I was not a fan of it either, and I'm still not a fan of it. But I have deep respect for their success and the way that they do it, and they appeal to a certain audience, and they do a very good job at it, and hopefully we appeal to a certain audience, and both sides, think that, what they think about the other side.
I mean, one key advantage in terms of the rollout, which is what the impression of success comes from, is the volume that they do. Is I think that they have a business development team that goes out and pitches developers on their portfolio of brands. And if you're a developer doing a new hotel, you're probably going to say, well, they say, what brand do you want? I say, well, I'll take a St. Regis. He says, well, you can't have when you're in Cleveland or whatever. And he says, well, then I'll take a W. And the guy says, well, maybe I can sell that back at the home office, even though it probably should be a Westin. Right. And so they end up, everybody wants the new fresh brand. So the developers that they work with all want the W. Same thing now with Marriott's finally getting to that same place, 15 years later. But I think that's one of the reasons you see the rollout is that you're going to take a Sheraton, you're going to take a Westin, or you're going to take a W. Particularly, there's already probably already 3 Sheratons and a Westin in the market you're in. So they have a real need to create these new brands at all the various price points in order to be able to continue to roll out in the markets that they want to be in.
Okay.
That makes sense.
I think we're going to open up the floor to a few questions. I don't know how I go about selecting anyone. I guess if anyone has a question, I'm not sure I can see you, but maybe we can get a hand up in the air. And is there a microphone over there? And there's one right here. There's one right there. So why don't you hop over there and why doesn't the next person who wants to ask a question hop over to the other microphone?
Good evening. Thanks so much for joining us. Just had a quick question. Obviously, all of your brands and your concepts are very unique and different. My question is sort of, what do you see when you visit your properties, your developments? What do you see maybe about yourself that you've invested in your property? And obviously, Alex, you have a very different sort of take on it, and you have a collection, and sort of, I'm just curious to know, like, you've invested a lot of yourself, and each of your brands and concepts are unique and different, and I'm curious to know, like, what do you see in yourself when you go to your property?
Are you asking me or?
I can tell you what we all think is there's a light bulb that's out,
Yeah, I was
and
just gonna
the
Something on the
music is
floor.
too loud or too
Yeah.
low or the wrong music, and and you see all your flaws, and hopefully you continue to focus on them and continue to improve upon them.
Sean is 100% correct. I just got back from London and I walked into the hotel last night for an appointment, and it was literally I saw a light fixture that was like just coming out of the wall, and I'm like, why is no one else seeing this? And so on. It was kind of a joke actually, and so on. There's one lamp that's in the lobby of the hotel, and literally every time I would walk in, the lampshade would be askew. And I'd be like, why can we not get this one lampshade? Is like no one else seen this and so on. And I'd bring it up and so on. And finally, the engineer just went and like welded it, I think, in place and so on. but Sean is correct. You definitely see all the flaws, and it's a lot of self-analysis in a sense, and your self-critique.
We have a question here, and if anyone else can step to that mic for the next question.
Hi, my name is Catherine Lau. I'm an alumnus. I work with L&L Holding Company, and I work in real estate development. So I had a question for all three of you regarding the challenges you face on your development projects, whether it's acquiring the property, entitlement, zoning, construction, and then putting everything all together.
The answer is yes.
You just answered
So what are the
it.
major
I think
challenges?
Richard knows that I have the most challenging development project, probably. I mean, yeah, we face all those challenges, but I mean, it varies by project. And we have the Hotel Chelsea, which has every single challenge that I could have imagined, and about 300 that I didn't imagine that we're working through. But we have a passion for the project, and the whole team is extremely excited about it. And we're taking the kind of steps I think that will allow us to sort of work through some really challenging issues there in order to create a great product and a great hotel, and really be true to the legacy of the property while bringing it into the future as well.
I think that actually understates the answer to the question, because I think you actually hit on a little theme that runs through all of us, and I think everybody in this business. We generally don't approach this as big real estate guys. We're hotel people looking for opportunities, and by nature of that, we find deals with hair on them.
Yep.
So there are entitlement issues and zoning issues. There are tenants in place and structural issues and landmark issues. And I think the one thing we've done, and I know all of our developments haven't been, simply sitting around with designers and having a good time making something look pretty. They've been battles, and they really are battles.
Yeah.
And these projects, from start to finish, are sometimes 3 or 4 years. And at the end, you look back and you say, I just can't believe I actually started where I was. Yeah. So you really hit upon it.
Yeah.
It's all of the above, and it's all of the above taken to a quantum level higher than you may have even ever thought about it.
Yeah, I'm just going to add just one other thing to it. And so, Sean and I were talking about this earlier before we started, but every project is a different animal. It just is never ever the same. It's as Richard was saying, it's just really multidimensional and very complicated, but very satisfying also. And so on. It's a very interesting challenge, but they're never the same.
My name's Ryan. I wanted to go back to Richard's question earlier about getting guests in your hotel that really aren't your target audience, and really take it more to a marketing standpoint. So in the way that distribution works today, and I work for a global wholesaler, it's so easy to get, this is a boutique hotel, and all of your brands have differentiating factors, but how do you communicate those out there to try to really pull in your guest, as opposed to someone who's on an Expedia and just looks and says, oh, it's a boutique in that neighborhood, yeah, I'm going to book that, but really doesn't know the difference between an Ace boutique or another brand's boutique within that neighborhood?
Yeah, well, I'll comment first and so on. It's a lot what Sean was saying and so on. There is a very much a self-selecting element to it. It's almost like there's like certain like dog whistles in a sense that you know that all the layers of the things that you do that create that message, and it is very self-selecting. And I think for us, the way we look at it is, just they're all humans and so on. So we're sort of so we're
Mostly.
sort of so I'm always surprised at when people comment to me, the people who say they're super into the hotel or super comfortable with it there, and the ones who aren't, and it's oftentimes very surprising to me. I was in a conversation one time with an investor developer, and he was explaining to me that his dad, he and his dad went to the hotel. His dad absolutely loved it and was like super into it and so on. And he himself, the son, felt uncomfortable there and so on. So it's like, I can't explain. There's like no rhyme or reason why that is. It's just human nature, I don't know if that really answered your question, but it's something in the zone of what Sean said about
Even to bring it to Ed with King and Grove, I mean, King and Grove and Ace are relatively similar in location, at least the property in New York, but two totally different concepts. So how do you really get that, here's our King and Grove brand versus here's the Ace brand, and capture that within a distribution channel versus,
If I knew the answer to that, I would probably, I would just do that. I would just sell that, not do what we do, and so on.
No, but I think there are cues, whether they're conscious or subconscious, that you message out to the audience, and I think that's important. And I think that we all pick up on them whether we realize it or not. And so one will visit a website of a hotel and instantly, it's a little bit like Malcolm Gladwell's book Blink, instantly respond, this is probably a place for me, or this is probably not a place for me, without thinking about it. And it's sort of our job to try to speak to that audience, and hopefully if we're good at it, they will hear what we're saying without it being said, or on occasion it being said. And in fact, one of the there's probably people here from the W Hotel, but one of the things that really made me crazy when I visited W Hotel was the first thing that someone gave me a tour early on, and they explained to me how cool they were, and it was, and I instantly knew that they were not cool. And yet, for a lot of people, that was important. And I think we have different products and do different things, but one of the things that we've tried to do, say at Bowery, is really cater to a community of people where it's say 6 degrees of separation. We don't have a huge web presence. We don't have a huge push, but everyone there in some way, shape, or form is somewhat related to each other. And Alex brought up earlier that he has a cultural engineer, and I think a lot of these type of properties, they always end up having someone who works for them that doesn't have a real title, and you can't say what they do, and you have no idea, but somehow they work on sort of a sort of stealth level of communicating the message and connecting the people that want to come there. And I think that on this sort of non-giant chain level, this is something that works, and it's the semiotics of
the other aspect of it, I think. Oh, sorry,
I was just going to say. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Jinx. No, what I was going to say is also, we, and especially in our segment, we're relying very heavily on repeat guests who feel comfortable and do feel like they have an association with our hotel or our brand or in a market or across the board. So while somebody who you might think is inappropriate would come to the Ace or one of mine or Sean's hotels, they may not come back, and the folks that do come back and the folks that populate the lobby and sort of drive the experience, many of whom are local people, they kind of do feel like they belong, and they do fit the psychographic and the demographic, or whatever however you want to characterize it. Because remember, 90% of your guests aren't staying in your hotel, really, if you have an F&B operation of any consequence. So they're mostly local people or tourists who are staying somewhere else. And so if someone doesn't like my hotel one time, they may try the Ace the next time, love it, and stay there forever, you know.
I was just going to add one other thing too, and so on, just because I think Sean hit on an important point, and so on. And this question actually came up earlier today. It's almost a tribal sort of thing, and so on. So if you think of sort of various different metaphorical tribes, the humans have a deep need to belong to some sort of tribe, and I think these days that can come in a lot of different forms, and it is very much what Sean was saying. It's like there's certain cues that you message out there, and sometimes it's on a very subconscious level or conscious level, but and that's what helps create the kind of self-selection, and that's why I like to refer to it as it's just the people who are drawn to the hotel. It's like we don't really, in a sense, we really just try to share what we're doing, and then people are drawn to it, you know.
I think this is going to be the last question.
So a question that has come up constantly in the undergrad program, and maybe it'll get answered in graduate school, I don't know, is the some semblance of a definition of what a boutique hotel is. And that answer was long enough that maybe it was in there. But just while I've stood up here long enough, I thought I would just ask, if you explain it to someone that's never stayed in a hotel, what is a boutique hotel? If they can be 300 rooms or if they can be 19 rooms, is it simply you know it when you see it, or do you have something beyond that?
No, it doesn't mean anything anymore.
Well, I was going
Right.
to say,
It doesn't.
Marcel Duchamp years ago was asked about Dada. He said, true Dada is reject Dada.
Yeah,
And it's...
that's very
Yeah,
insightful.
I think that I don't know, I think it's really just sort of, at this point, it's a label that's been sort of beaten down, and I don't think
It's
that...
empty.
Yeah,
It's any hotel that's not a chain hotel is now called a boutique hotel or a lifestyle hotel, whether
Yeah.
they fit something that's just the way we might collectively up here do it, or it's just not a chain hotel. And unfortunately, no one's come up with a better name. We've all tried than boutique or lifestyle, so we're all kind of been stuck with it for the last 30 years, but it no longer has any meaning as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Well, we have certificates of appreciation for our panelists. Now, I don't know if when we award these, people ever have them framed, but so this is a rhetorical question. I would really like to see how the four of you would frame your certificates. I assume they wouldn't all be just solid black plain frames, so good. But these are suitable for framing, so. So Richard, thank you so much. Again, you've been a great friend for the Tisch Center all of these years. Good. Alex, thank you so much. Alex, I think, holds the record of number of interns and hires from the Tisch Center. So special thank you for that.
Thank you very much.
Sean, thank you. We're looking forward to next year, saying that you've set a new record for the number of internships. And Ed has also been a great friend. Ian Schrager was our new student orientation speaker this year. And it was really less scary. It was really scary. It's great.
That's great.
So thank you. So please join me in thanking our panelists. And they will stay around and join us for the reception so you can ask individual questions. Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.